Bloomberg Audio Studios. Podcasts, radio, news.
Let's turn back to the Middle East now and how Israel might respond to the Iranian drone and missile attack over the weekend. The UN Secretary-General is among those who've called for restraint. Joining us now to discuss is Israeli military spokesperson Peter Lerner. Peter Lerner, thank you for joining us on the programme. What sort of response are you preparing for?
Good morning. Indeed, the IDF has presented the government with a spectrum of potential actions that could be taken. The government is currently deliberating and considering the pros and cons of each avenue. I think we need to be patient and understand that the situation here is very fragile, and that is why the IDF is continuing to maintain a defensive posture with our aerial defense on high alert. Thankfully, we were able to alleviate some of the restrictions on the civilian population here in Israel today, and have permitted that schools go back and kindergartens get back into action. There was a late night decision, which may imply something with regard to your question. I think what is actually more important at this stage is to acknowledge and see how the unity of decent nations came around together to defend from Iran's attack against Israel. I think that is a positive development, and we need to embrace that and look forward and see how we can further deepen those strategic relationships.
Yes, I'm sure that there is relief in Israel that the attack by Iran was repelled pretty comprehensively. But I want to ask you how close Iran came actually to piercing Israeli air defences on Saturday night and what the system can withstand.
So they fired around 350 different types of weaponry, ballistic missiles, 120 ballistic missiles, 170 or so explosive drones, 30 cruise missiles. The cruise missiles and the explosive drones, they didn't even make it into Israel's airspace. Many of the ballistic missiles made it into the airspace, but were intercepted by our Arrow 2 and 3 intercepting aerial defense systems. And a handful of them actually impacted in Israel, mostly in the area of the Nevatim Air Base, which is in the south of Israel, in the Negev Desert. So while they weren't very successful from our perspective, of course, there's a clear threat. And we have to keep in mind that each one of these ballistic missiles carries a warhead of around 120 kilograms, which could potentially cause a huge amount of damage. Luckily, where they impacted did not cause damage. The base continued to be operational, and even as the F-35 Adir aircraft came back from defending the skies of Israel, they landed in Nevatim base safe and sound. Okay. So how close did they come? They threw at us quite a substantial amount of munition. I think the alliance that came together in order to repel that worked exceptionally. I don't want to be too hyperbolic on it, but I do think it was a significant success. But with military men, we tend to be very boots on the ground attitude. We need to look forward to what happened and what can happen in the future.
Well, I'd like to go back to the options that you mentioned that have been presented to the Israeli government as to what the IDF could do. What does the most extreme of those options look like?
I don't want to elaborate on what could be or could not be. The government has been presented. They will make their decisions. They'll give us their instructions, and we will act accordingly. That's the right process. That's how it should be done.
In terms of Iran, how much of it was a display, as it were? I mean, some of the munitions that you talk about are slow moving, and Hezbollah, for example, did not attack in a significant coordinated fashion, even though some estimate their rocket capacity at 70 to 100,000.
No, actually, we understand that the Hezbollah have almost 200,000 rockets, including guided missiles. Indeed, they participated in a very minute way. I think they launched actually one rocket towards Israel in the course of the attack. But throughout the day preceding the attack, they had fired over 100 rockets into Israel. So Iran did not begin its aggression against Israel on Saturday night. Iran has been meddling in the stability of this region for many, many years. And in the last 6 months, even more so with their attacks via the Houthis, whether it's directed against Israel or the shipping routes, with financing, training, equipping Hamas over the years. Hamas wouldn't have been able to conduct the 7th of October attack without the support of Iran. And Hezbollah, which is effectively a forward division of Iran on Israel's northern border. So what happened on Saturday night was just a step from Iran being behind the scenes on the stage to front and center on the stage. I would be very cautious at concluding that the fact that they weren't successful means that it wasn't a dangerous feat. There were something like 60 tons of explosive hurled at Israel on Saturday night and early Sunday morning. The fact that our aerial defense systems were effective, and the fact that the alliance was able to intercept the vast majority of those, even before they were able to enter Israel's airspace, that is a successful outcome, but it could have been quite the opposite.
Could Israel have defended itself without the support of the allies that you mentioned?
I think, could we have? Absolutely. And we've been defending ourselves against, on the first day of the 7th of October, when Hamas invaded Israel, they did it under the cover of something like 3,000 or 4,000 rockets in just one day. Of course, none of them were cruise missiles. None of them were ballistic missiles. And the drone capability was extremely limited compared to what Iran has. But the aerial defense systems then withheld most of them, not at the level of 99% that we experienced on Saturday night. So I think there are absolute advantages to the fact that a explosive drone can take something between 7 and 9 hours to get from Iran to Israel. But the ballistic missiles, 11, 20 minutes, something like that. So, and that perhaps even indicates why some of them were successful in impacting in Israel. We can, and we don't have an opportunity if we wouldn't have had an alliance, which we are very grateful and thankful for, the US umbrella under the United States Central Command, together with the United Kingdom, together with the French and regional players. But there is the option in such a situation, if there is not an alliance, that we defend ourselves. Absolutely.
How good an ally has the UK been to Israel? I
think if people sitting at the same table deciding to stand up against the tyranny of Iran and their diabolical plan to attack a sovereign nation state, I think that is a lot of credit. And the malign activities of Iran is not new to anybody in the UK, in government, and of course in defense and intelligence establishments. The fact that Iran has conducted this attack on Israel is the game changer. And I was just listening to what Lord Cameron said earlier today, and he identified it exactly. They failed in their attack, and they failed in the fact that now everybody knows that they're up to no good.
The US are still discussing an aid package for Israel. How much do you need that?
That's really beyond my pay grade. I think that is definitely something that we are grateful for, and the government will negotiate exactly what Israel needs and how the US sees that.